What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Connect. My name is Johnny Mitchell, and today's guest is a man named Al Lindbloom. He is a former enforcer for the Detroit Mafia. He's from Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and he grew up connected and related to all the wise guys that ran the Mafia in Detroit.
And I saw the whole picture very clearly growing up. I was around it all my life. On like the third day of school, I beat up a dude with a building block. And I'm in first grade. They're all looking at me as like, he's going to be one of us one of these days, pretty much.
His uncle was Tony Giacalone, who was involved in the hit on Jimmy Hoffa and who ran Detroit for decades.
It's 7 o'clock in the morning. He says, you think you can handle this? I said, yeah. And he's like, you sure you can handle this? I said, yeah, Tony. I laughed. I said, yeah, Tony, I got this. No problem. He's like, all right, let me know how it goes.
Al was involved in extortion, larceny, drug dealing. He ran a steroid ring, a heroin ring. He was a pot kingpin by the time he was 17 years old.
I had an NFL guy buying juice from me too, and he was great.
For the Lions?
Yeah.
He was also a bank robber. And during the course of one of these bank robberies, he took the cops on a wild high-speed chase that eventually got him locked up for 13 years.
So I stomp on the gas and go. They actually called off the chase. I was going so fast.
While he was locked up, he became a writer, and he's written over 10 novels. He's also a motivational speaker, and he runs a great YouTube channel. Look him up. It's called Gunner Detroit. He also has a clothing brand, Our Thing Apparel. He has an amazing story, and he's here to tell us all about it.
And it said, you have a bomb in the counter, right? And if I don't get 75 grand in the next 90 seconds, it's going to go boom with everybody in it. Clock's ticking. Tick, tock.
That's when I see the lights behind me start to flash. And I didn't even think, I just hit it. I was driving like my life depended on it. Then I parked the car, hopped out, closed the door, and I started running.
And he pulls out a burner, a shank, like 6 inches. And he passes it to me. And he goes, here, that's yours. Don't ever leave the cell block without this. He was the reason I made it out of that place alive.
Al, what's going on, brother?
Not much. How you doing,
Thanks
bro?
to get you out to big bad LA, dude.
Yeah, man.
It looks like Detroit around here.
No, still doesn't look like Detroit, but it's definitely out of my comfort zone. That's for sure. It's so weird, I live in the sticks, the boonies, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Now here I am, like dodging bums and stuff on the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice hotel you put me in, though. So thank you.
Oh yeah, well you're very welcome for that. I had to do something, putting you up around, homeless cities. I figure the least I could do is, get you a decent room.
Yeah.
So your story, dates back to the 80s and 90s in Grosse Pointe. That's where you're from. Detroit. What is it about Detroit and the Mafia there that is so secretive? That is so, they're one of the last families that's operating that really has not had huge FBI takedowns. So why do they have their shit so tight? Why do they not have rats the way Philadelphia did, the way New York did and does, the way all these other cities collapse because of, RICO and rats? What is it about the D?
There's, like I said, I'm no expert, but it's very different and unique in the regard that it's almost all family and blood tied or related through marriage. So everybody's it's very, very close knit. It's not like these other families that they're grabbing guys from all over the place. They are grabbing guys from the neighborhood that are nephews and cousins and stuff. And not a lot of them either. It's just like, it's a very tight knit community. And when you're blood related or married, you're much less apt to rat. And that's it.
Yeah.
Because you're going to, like when I got busted, the feds had me in a room and they were like, they're playing good cop, bad cop. One of them was talking about my girlfriend. No, you got that little cute girlfriend, Ramona. You can go home tonight, sleep with her tonight. Just tell us about this, that, and that. There's a murder they were asking me about. And I'm like, all I could think about was, for the very brief moment, I thought, if I was to cooperate, I would destroy my family, destroy my grandparents. And my grandfather could no longer go look his goombadis in the eyes. He couldn't be around them. You're the one who had the freaking rat grandson bust us and put us away.
Right, the whole community, not just people involved, but civilians, people that are just ancillary.
Men and women, cousins, most of the civilians.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you're the one scumbag who rat us out. So I couldn't do it. I told myself right then and there, I'm in this room, which is, they were, back and forth, good cop, bad cop. And I ended up puking on the floor. I just got beaten. I just got arrested, beaten by 6 cops. I'm all bloody and busted up. I robbed the bank. They were just like, you want to go home today? He says, outside of that door is 3 different counties, state police, ATF. They all want a piece of you. But I have the jurisdiction right now. If you help us and work with us. And I'm like, I'm seeing my grandfather, my grandmother, and my, all my aunts and uncles and cousins. I'm like, I just couldn't be the guy who raps. So the moral of the story is that I think that's one of the reasons. And the other thing is, I think, again, I'm no expert. I mean, I was around a few of these old mob guys, kind of got familiar with them, did a little work for them. And I saw the whole picture very clearly growing up. I was around it all my life and watch how it works. And they're very smart how they operate. Like, to get made, for example, back in the day, I don't know about anymore, you had to have a business degree. Think about that.
Wow.
And a mafia, you had to. So the boss, Jack Tocco, had a business degree from U of D. So did his underboss. So all of them did. I think Tony Jack didn't finish school, but he went to school. All of them, all these guys, they went to school for business, and and so you have it's more run like a tight corporation.
Right, exactly.
And the other thing is, we talked about this grooming assets. They groom assets from young people. Like you said, they've seen someone who could be malleable, and they'll say, hey, listen, I'll pay for your college. And
somebody from the neighborhood.
Somebody from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's usually a nephew or a cousin or something like that. It happened with my uncle Sal, same thing happened. And
your Uncle Sal what did he grow up to be?
An IRS agent.
Wow. So let me ask you this. So this is the whole thing. That's like the Departed movie where Jack Nicholson picks out, the kid from the neighborhood to become an FBI agent. Why did they look at your Uncle Sal and not want to bring him up in the ranks of the mob? Was there something about him? Did he look too square? And they were like, you're better off being on this side of the law.
That was part of it, but it's my grandfather. My grandfather didn't want him being that deep in. So
right.
They all respected my grandfather. Right. They love my grandfather. These old men we're going to talk about, they love my grandfather. They were all Gumbadis, like best friends growing up. They all lived in the same neighborhood. They all grew up together, went to the same schools together. Right. Once they started having kids and families, they all went to the same, baptisms and reunions and parties and anniversaries, and very, very close. They even built their own church. They built their entire church for themselves. Right. This just the community. Yeah. And it's all the mob guys and then the other Sicilians from Terracini, Michigan.
And so your grandfather, through the course of building these relationships, told the made guys, the mob guys, hey, I don't want my son Sal to be, a member of the mafia. But now
he can do this.
He can do this. Yeah. So now how would they use Sal now that he's an IRS agent? Obviously, exactly. you guys are skimming on taxes, but he could let them know, hey,
who's looking at who?
These guys are looking into you. You're going to want to be careful.
Exactly.
Right.
Who's looking at who? Who's trying to
get?
It's just, he had direct access to the same files the FBI had. So as an IRS agent, he had literally the same access to them. So he could look at, anyone who's been investigated for whatever, boom, he could see it and then tell you. Hey,
now you were telling me, the last episode we had you here on the Patreon, you were saying that they have people in the papers. They have people actually, now I know this has changed now because everything is digital, but when you were coming up, right, in the 80s and 90s, they actually had influence with the Detroit newspapers.
Yeah.
And basically if they ran stories that the mob didn't like, they would go to the advertisers and be like, you cannot advertise with this newspaper anymore.
Shut them down. They even made them strike. The whole place went on strike for like 5 months. They lost so much money because they pushed them to the limit. They were covering these I think it was the RICO case in '96. They kept running like not many. They ran some articles on it, and then dude, the boss, again, Jack Tocco, who is my uncle, he's really a cousin, but he's he introduces an uncle because he's old. You know what I'm saying? Like my grandfather's age. He was a very just intense, powerful man, and he could wave a wand, bro, and change the world. So if he said he'd go see somebody like Tony Jack or even my grandfather and say, listen, you go tell those people up there at the news that it's over, strike right now, and then shut them down. Yeah. Or they'd say the advertisers don't. They were connected to all the advertisers. All these businessmen, they're all in bed with them. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? They just said, don't advertise to the news. And they said, okay, Jack, no problem. Or Tony or whatever.
Because they might be paying them extortion money, or the businesses might be benefiting from, contracts or,
could be anything. It might just be out of respect.
Yeah.
If they just said, don't advertise there, do me a favor. Yeah. And they'd say, yeah, no problem, Tony.
So obviously these are men of high intelligence. These are white collar. They're blue collar, but they're really involved in mostly white collar scams. They have business degrees. You are the complete opposite. You are a knucklehead from the beginning. You are from a broken home. You had your grandparents, you were raised by your grandparents, but you know, your father was an alcoholic. Your mother, you know, had mental problems. So did they make any attempt to push you towards college the way that they push their own children? Or did they just see you as muscle, as this crazy kid from the beginning and say, we're going to put this kid in our pocket, you know, Luca Brasi style, you know, because we're going to need somebody to, you know, we still need muscle.
Well, dude, you nailed it there, but I never was considered to be anything growing up. I was a bad kid from the beginning. Like when I moved with my grandparents on like the third day of school, I beat up a dude with a building block. I call him Luca Brasi because he was a big bullying some kids on this building block, and I smashed him in the head with it. And like I'm first grade, and this like sets the stage for the rest of my life. So I'm constantly fighting and getting in trouble. Now all the Italians are very gossipy. The women are on the phone constantly. The men are too. They all speak Sicilian, and they all know. By the time I'm 15 years old, I've racked up like 5 or 6 felonies. I mean, I've been to the youth home. I mean, I got all these charges. They're all looking at me as like, he's going to be one of us one of these days, pretty much. One of these days, this kid's going to be. And that's eventually what happened when I was, I started selling weed just because I was starving. My dad didn't feed us. So I actually convinced some dude it was a funny story. I drove across town on this raggedy piece of junk moped to a dude who was the only drug dealer that I knew. And I was like praying that he was there, but he wasn't there. So I didn't even have enough gas money to get back on this junkie thing. I had a $300 troop jacket, and the guy had told me, if you ever want to sell the troop jacket, I'll give you 1/2 ounce of weed. In my mind, I was like, I can flip this 1/2 ounce of weed and get it going because I know these black crack dealers were always trying to buy weed from me. So this is what happened. I go over there with my troop jacket. My mom bought it for me. And this one kid, I'm not going to say his name, we'll call him DC, but he was a young, like redhead kid. I knocked on the door and I says, Joe here. And his brother said, no, he's not here. What do you need? And I said, I need to talk to Joe. Maybe he wants to buy my coat. He's like, oh, all I got is COD, whatever you need. I see this kid sitting on the couch. He's got a lowrider parked in the driveway. Badass freaking lowrider. This $50,000 lowrider. This is 1988. And I look at him and I say, hey, man, can I talk to you for a minute? This little redhead kid. He's like 17. He looks at me. He's like, what? I said, just real quick out here on the lawn. He comes out and I say, like, get him away from the house. Guys are all watching. I was full of guys. And he's like, what's up? I said, man, listen, I know you're the man behind the man, plugging Joe. I said, man, I'm hungry, bro. I need a sack. I can get rid of freaking anything. And I can flip it. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm not the man. I said, bro, come on. I'm not an idiot. Look at you, bro. He's draped in jewelry. You got the low rise. I'm not a freaking dummy, man. I said, I'm telling you, over the Panic Zone, which is the Oxford Squares, it's all black crack dealers. That's it. Mm-hmm. I said, they freaking will buy all the weed that I bring them. I said, my mom bought me this jacket. I'm willing to sell you this jacket for 1/2 ounce. He looks at me and goes, I don't want you to keep your jacket, man. Your mom bought you the jacket. He says, follow me. So he jumps in this low rider. I'll never forget it. He backs out of the driveway, and I never forget, he plays the song Colors from Ice-T song Colors. Mm-hmm. And it goes, boom. Colors. He's got like 6 15s in the back of this thing, and it's going boom through this. Sound like a concert rocking through the freaking neighborhood. And I'm like, what? I'm on this moped, trying to keep up. So I go to his house. Long story short, he gave me a $1/4 on the front. I took that $1/4. I called my cousin Frankie, and I said, listen, you come down and help me sell this weed, man. I need somebody to have my back. I'm going in the Panic Zone, and I can't just little 15-year-old white kid standing.
What's the Panic Zone?
It's a projects.
Gotcha.
Oxford Cordova Square between Quinn Road and 15 Mile, between Gratiot and Groesbeck. It's all black projects.
It's the height of the crack era.
Height of the crack era.
Dangerous as fuck.
Dangerous. Yeah. They just hang out on the corner and people come through and boom. Yeah. Well, I had a couple of friends in there, these black dudes, my friend Sydney, and we would go there to his house and I'd always have a couple of joints. But every time I go over there, these black dudes would come in and they'd be like, yo, let me get one of them good. Because she's like, you white boys always got the good green weed. I can't get, all we can get is the dirt weed. Sell me some. And I'm like, no, I'll sell you a joint. No, sell me more. Sell me the whole bag. I'm like, nah, man, I need to smoke. I'll sell you a joint or two. So they're like, man, just bring me whatever. So when I did this with Frankie, I went home and I bagged it all up in the Ace, the whole thing, the whole $1/4. And I said, come with me. He stole his dad's gun. He had this big 44 revolver, big old motherfucker. And he just tucked it in his shirt and left it out like John Wayne. They were saying, what's up with your boy John Wayne and that gun? I said, I just got my back. We pulled up in this, like, there's a square there. And I said, yo, I got the good green. Who wants them? And these freaking crack dealers, and every single one of them, like, I'll take 5. I'll take it. Like, I wanted to buy it all, but I'm like, no. Boom, boom. So I sold in like 2 hours this whole quarter pound. I got like $900 out of it.
Yeah.
And I went back and
now you're in the game.
I was in the game. I went and bought a bunch of groceries.
And you're 16 at this point?
I was 15.
Right. So now this was like your first real hustle was as a weed guy.
Yeah.
And what other, were you ever kicking up to made guys with your drug money?
Yeah. Well, this is where that starts to get freaking scumbaggy because my Uncle Pete, who was like, he was a mob guy, wise guy, but he didn't want to be in the mob. He told me very clearly, that's for a sucker. If you're in the mob, you got to pay up a bunch of money to some freaking old man, and he tells you what to do, and you got to do it. He's like, fuck them. He's like, you don't want to be in the mob. That's what he told me. And my Uncle Sal, same thing. But so when I was 16, so I'm doing pretty good now. By the way, I started doing this with the weed because I was starving. My dad wasn't buying me food. But that's why and then it blew up really quick. And within 6 months, I had like 5 guys selling weed for me, you know?
Right.
And now I'm blowing up. I got so much freaking money, I can't even spend.
How many pounds a week are you moving?
Not a lot, like 4 or 5 pounds, but you know.
But out in dime and 10 and 20 bags. Exactly. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It was clocking. I was like making like $2,000, $3,000 a week.
Which is a fortune for a poor kid.
In 1988.
Yeah, no shit.
Oh man, I bought a brand new 4-wheeler. I bought a nice new Mustang. I had a Ninja.
Yeah.
Before I even had a license, I had all this stuff.
Now, I want to talk about that because, historically, the Sicilian Mafia prided themselves on not being involved with drug trafficking. Now, because it's such a small group, the Mafia, and essentially it functions like get money however you can as an associate, and then you kick upstairs to the few guys that are actually in this fraternity.
Right.
But we don't really give a shit how you're getting the money.
Yeah.
Just don't tell us about it.
About 16 years old, my uncle had this cool leather coat. It was a badass leather. I'm like, I like that leather, man. I like that. He went and bought me one. We same size, but he bought it a little big for me. I went to my grandparents' house every weekend, right? So I go down there and I got an ounce of weed stuffed in my pocket and like $800, and I put it on the chair. And he comes down in the basement. He's like, "You want to go to the market with me?" That's where you go hang out, the Eastern Market. All the wise guys and all his like crew were down in the Eastern Market. I said, "No, I'm gonna stay watch football with Grandpa." So he leaves and comes back a couple hours later. He says, "Lonzo, basement," and like he said it with force, "Basement." Oh shit, this ain't good. And like I walked down there and he's holding my coat and he goes, because he had the same coat. So he put mine on and he goes in the pocket and he's got, now drugs were a very bad thing, like horrible thing. He had been busted for selling cocaine like a year before, right? And my grandparents just razzed him daily, like every day, terrorized him. Eventually moved out. You freaking dummy, because he dropped out of school like me when he was 15. He's dyslexic. And so they just terrorized him because he's a black sheep. He made the family look bad, dropped out of school, busted for coke. They were just on him all the time. Drugs are bad. Drugs are bad. Now, he freaking says, "What's this?" And he pulls his bag of weed out. I'm like, I think I'm in big trouble. I said, "Some weed." He's like, "What are you doing with this?" I said, "I'm selling it. I'm trying to make a buck, And he goes, "This is bullshit weed." And he throws the whole thing at me, right? He said, "What the?" He says, "Come here. If you're going to sell weed, you're going to sell good weed." Comes up, marches me upstairs. I go in the garage, bunch of banana boxes filled with pounds of weed. He's like, "Take 10. It was good weed.
Wow.
He's like, "How much you paying for those?" I'm like, 1,000. He's like, $1,000 a pound. Take 10, go. And now you're working for me.
Wow.
And I freaking, that's when I blew up. Started blowing up.
So you're getting the good ticket, the good weed at the low.
But I had to kick up because he was saying, I'm kicking up. He's saying, you got to kick up because I'm kicking up to Tony and Tony's kicking up to the boss.
So the drug money is kicking up to the mafia bosses.
All the money's kicking up to the mafia bosses because this is what he said. I'm not sure. It's probably a lot of it was bullshit, but he said they got judges on the line, lawyers, bondsmen, all these, and so if you get busted, there's got to be money there to pay to bribe them. And my grandfather, when I busted steroids, bribed the judge $10,000.
All right, you guys, let's take a minute to thank our amazing sponsor for today's show. If you're a fan, you already know what it is. Mood, Delta 8 and Delta 9 products. You guys go over to hellomood.co right now to get an array of all of the best Delta 8 and Delta 9 products. Look, we got a Rice Krispie treat made with like some kind of delicious cereal. We got edibles of all kinds, cookies, and of course, incredible gummies. You guys, they are the best Delta 8 and Delta 9 products company on the market right now. You already know this. Go over to hellomood.co right now and use promo code CONNECT20 to get 20% off everything and anything on their website. And of course, if you want a free pack of gummies, use that promo code CONNECTFREE. All you got to do is pay for the shipping. They will ship you a free pack of gummies. Support them because they support us. hellomood.co to get all of the best Delta 8 and Delta 9 products on the market. All right, let's get back into the episode. Wasn't there, you told me about this big time black drug dealer.
Yeah.
Remind me who that was. He was a Detroit, I think he was a heroin dealer.
Yeah.
And he was working almost directly with a top boss from Detroit. What was that?
So Frank Nitty Usher, you got to research this guy. I'm sure I met him once when I was in the county jail. Actually, he was busted for not that much of heroin, like 7 ounces, but he ended up beating it. But we became friends. I played basketball with him every day. I didn't know he was a kingpin, dude.
Black guy.
Yeah. Well, it turns out he knew that I was Italian and a Toco. So he lashed on to me. He said, I know your people. He said, your Uncle Joe saved my life one time when I was a kid. My ball bounced out in the street in front of the store, and like this truck was racing down, and like he ran out and grabbed me and like turned his back to this truck and he just guarded me from being blown away. And he told the guy, if you race down the street ever again, I'll freaking kill you. Because the guy was racing. Mm-hmm. And the guy was like, sorry, sir, I'm sorry. There's a gangster telling him this. So he said, so what happened with them is when he was young, Tony Jack, for whatever reason, talking about long-term grooming, they took him, Frank Usher, and groomed him since he was like 14, 15 years old. And they raised him like a mobster, like he was in the mafia. This is the rules. This is the etiquette. This is how it works. This is the oath. This is how you structure a family. You tiered, it's protection. This keeps the boss protected and insulated. And they taught him everything over like these years. Now, I didn't know any of this. I didn't learn any of this too much later from some people who write about this stuff, so-called experts. I'm not an expert. I'm just going what they said. But he ended up. So what happened was Tony was given. He was the plug. If you've ever heard of the Turkish or the French Connection, yeah. They were all part of that French Connection. Tons of it were coming in barrels of pasta sauce. And Tony Zarelli had a place called Spaghetti Palace, and he'd bring this freaking big drums in and have kilos of heroin, and they would give it to the freaking Frank Nitty, and he formed Black Mafia family. Basically, that's what it was. He was the precursor to Black Mafia, BMF.
Right.
And so Ray had this family and made millions and millions of dollars from heroin. And then he finally got busted in this insane murder rap, right? Where they had killed 7 people, but he convinced them while they were all about to kill him. He convinced them to let him live, because if they killed him, he's like, my soldiers and family are going to hunt you to the ends of the earth.
And he's also the plug. He's the heroin plug.
So they let him live, right?
Wow.
But then they charge him with all these murders. And he goes in.
Oh, so he was the guy that survived this robbery, or this home invasion.
Yeah. His blood was there and stuff.
So they charged him with killing all the people, even though they were victims.
They're idiots. They put all these bodies in a van, then like ran out of gas on the side of the highway and just left it there.
Holy shit.
Freaking guys. And so he had his blood in there. I'm just like, if you're a killer and you've already killed all these people, they cut their heads off too. It's gnarly.
Why would you stick around?
Why would you kill him? He's the main guy. You're going to let him come back. That's the guy that's going to come back and freaking kill you.
Yeah.
He's the first one I would have killed. But anyways, they let him live. And so he ends up going to prison. But
he beat that charge though.
So what happens is Tony Jack spends $1 million to get him out on an appeal, because they're making so much money out the heroin. They get him back in the street, and he appeals it and beats it and convinces the jury, it's all rigged. You have no idea how rigged.
Yeah, but this guy's clearly didn't do it though. It sounds like this guy.
I don't know.
Why would you kill a bunch of people and stay in the van with them?
Right.
Oh, but I guess he fled the scene.
He fled the scene, yeah.
Ah, I gotcha. So he might have done it. Who knows?
I'm pretty sure he didn't. But here's the thing. The jury or the judge or everybody was paid off. I can't express enough how, like, I know that sounds hard to believe, but I could give you stories that you just won't believe. You won't. That they have feds in their pockets. Feds that will let them kill witnesses. Let them.
Wow.
If you ever really want to look up something interesting, look up the Ritz-Carlton hit. This super fascinating hit called the Ritz-Carlton hit. Unbelievable. Like they murdered a witness in a hotel upstairs while Tony Jack and his whole family were having an anniversary party downstairs in the hotel.
Wow.
There was a shift change. A 10-minute shift change. The two feds like, listen to this guy, this black dude who's going to testify against one of Tony's associates, a Jewish dude as a bookie.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to get to Tony. If this guy testifies, we're going to get to Tony. So we had right away, they tipped him on, you know, what's going on. Yo, Tony, we got one talking. He says, all right, bring him to this hotel at this time. And then during shift change, give us a window of 10 minutes. That's all we need. And they said, okay. So two feds leave, give a 10-minute window. During that 10-minute window, two assassins come in, take the woman and put a bag over her head, take the kid, and they tie up the woman and the child, and they slit the guy's throat, kill him. And then they walk out, and 5 minutes later, the other cops walk in and find this. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, the DEA and all that are like, want to question, you know, the mob about it. And Tony Jack's like, really? You think I'm going to freaking kill somebody during my anniversary party in the same building? Really? Mm-hmm. This is a great alibi. They couldn't do nothing. And
wow.
But that's how much powerful they are, the type of juice and pull they had.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't, like, from when I got busted for the steroids, I remember driving, my uncle was really mad. My uncle Sal was driving, and I'm looking at him, I'm like, does Grandpa know? And he goes, of course he knows, stupid. And I'm like, is he mad? He's like, what do you think? You know, and I'm just like, fuck, drugs, you know. He said that, you know, what did he tell you about selling drugs? I'm like, man, that's just hustling, man. It's just steroids. I didn't even know it was that illegal, but it was. They just classified it as like class 1, just like coke or heroin, same class.
So the Detroit Mafia, sorry to cut you off. That's really heroin and drugs is probably the biggest blue collar kick up to them. You know, putting scams and gambling. I'm not counting all that. Yeah, I'm putting that in one category. Yeah. But they really had their hands all over it. Like even top guys during that era, I think they call it like the pizza connection, right? Yeah. Bringing it from New York and giving it to black guys who were making all the money for them.
Yeah, they were killing it. They were making tons of money, and they were making tons of money from gambling and municipal contracts and bid rigging and union manipulation and all that stuff.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the scams. Because, you know, I love a scam. I think it's what sets the mafia apart. You know what I mean? It's how they still make money today. What was,
I was involved in every scam.
Okay. Let's start. Extortion.
Well, extortion. Okay. So I was telling you on the way here how I extorted a deli owner, and it backfired on me. This is me kind of being an independent rogue dummy. Right. But some people are like Tony was really good at really, keying in on extorting drugs. I extorted a lot of drug dealers. Right. I mean, if somebody said, yo, so-and-so's getting money, man, the guy's moving like 10, 20 pounds a week. Well, I just go over there and I'd give him like two choices. I'd go, be cool about it and say, hey, listen, you know, this is our territory. You know, my family, my uncle, whatever. I'd always throw that in there. Yeah. Probably didn't need to, but sometimes they didn't even know. So I'd like, you know, Pete Choco's my uncle. Yeah. Then he kind of controls the weed racket around here, man. You can't be pumping 10, 20 pounds a week and not kicking up. What do you mean? I said, you got to pay a pound a week or $1,000 a week. Now, if they're like pushed back, then I'd knock them out. Yeah. And I'd just be like, wham, and knock them out and pull the pistol. And say, you see how easy I could kill you? You see how easy that is? I said, next time, I said, what are you going to do? Run and tell? Then your whole family has to hide for the rest of your life. Is that how you want it? Or you can keep pumping. All I need is $1,000 a week or a pound a week. Yeah. You can keep going. And here's the thing. Here's how I help you. If we hear and we have the cops in comment, narcos, we have everybody, if somebody starts investigating you or you're about to get busted, listen, we'll tip you off, clean up your house. If you get arrested, we have lawyers and judges and prosecutors and bondsmen. We'll get you out. So that's what the $1,000 a week is for.
So you're really offering a pretty nice package for $1,000 a week. That's not bad.
Yeah, offering them a service.
And most people accept it, I would assume.
They all accept it. Yeah, they all accept it. But I wanted to finish telling you about the one that went wrong. So I told you what I did, and this is the standard typical overlay for the underplay, almost like a prison extortion. Mm-hmm. You know, you've seen this in prison, where I go to this deli owner in Hamtramck, and I can get to know him. I go in there, buy a sandwich or whatever, and then I send a couple of black dudes in there to like trash the place. Mm-hmm. And they bust up the place, and then they leave, and they come back a couple of days later, and they trash the place. And the guy's going, "Oh, please, he's a Polish guy. Yeah, so, please, no, come on, you're ruining my place." Yeah. And then on the third day, I tell them, listen, all right, I'm going to be in there. You guys come in while I'm in there. Start tearing it up. They go in there and they start tearing it up. Hey, motherfucker, I pull my pistol out. Freaking, what's up? They like, wait, I pull the pistol on them. They like turn around and run. I literally kicked one of them in the ass. I was like, bam, motherfucker, I'll kill you. Come back and leave my boy alone. And I tell the old man, I said, listen, give me $500 a week. And, you know, this won't happen. Like, I'll make sure none of these freaking hoods. Wow. He says, yeah, okay, sure. But I didn't know he was already paying protection to some other freaking wise guy from a whole nother crew, from the Zarelli crew. And I didn't know any of those guys really. I mean, I kind of knew who they were, but I didn't know them. They were kind of like a dunce crew that were very separate from the few men that I knew.
Yeah.
I was around like Tony Jack and some of these other men. I'm not even gonna say their names because they have kids and nephews and whatever. But they was a different sect really. So I get called in to Tony's office and I don't know what it is. My grandpa says, go to Tony's restaurant. He wants to see you. I thought I was picking up dinner. And I walk in and keep in mind, I hadn't talked to Tony in a year, but he likes me. Tony likes me. I had pissed him off a bunch of times, but he always kind of came back and liked me, right? I go into this office and there's I think it was Frank Bramarito, some other dude that was Tony Zarelli's driver or something. And Tony Jack was in there. And I come in, this is how funny and stupid I am. This is how dumb as a punk I was. And so they let me in the door and there's a guy standing by the door. And like, that's the bodyguard or whatever. And I look at him, this fat dude. I said, how you doing, Tony? I said, this is the only thing stopped me from getting you, this whole fat motherfucker. And then none of them laughed. They all just like, shut the door. And they shut the door. And when it shuts the door, he gets under his desk and he hits like a latch and he goes, you hear this loud clank, clack. Now I'm in here. So I'm just like, I was trying to be funny, but I guess it wasn't funny. Yeah. And he basically says, what do you, you and this guy and this Polish guy in Hamtramck, what about it? I'm like, he's under a Jeezy. That means that's in Italian. He's under our Jeezy. I'm like, I didn't know that. He's like, yeah, because you didn't ask. What, I got to ask every time I want to try and make a buck? I got to ask? He says, yeah, that's how it works. Who am I supposed to ask? You could have asked your Uncle Pete. You could have asked Tony. Tony's standing there, serious as hell, just standing there looking at me. And this is the guy who was mad at me because
so the Zarellis had come to Uncle Tony and told them, hey, this guy's your boy's collecting from our guy that we're collecting from. Right.
Well, he knew I had a relationship with Tony. Yeah. He didn't know what kind of relationship, but I'm sure people were like, because the deli owner showed pictures and like, you know this guy? And of course, one of his guys like, you know who that is? That's Pete Toko's grandson, Alonzo. I know, that's Pete Toko's nephew. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. And then they started asking around like, oh, he's got Tony Jack likes him. He's done stuff with Tony. He's his little pit bull or whatever. Yeah. He's like, I said, so I got to try and make a buck in this town? I got to ask permission to wipe my ass? And they're like, yeah, that's how it works. And I wanted to say, man, fuck you. I mean, I don't owe you nothing, mother effer. I ain't got to pay you nothing. And he says, and he saw it in my eyes, like my mother F in my eyes, like my F you, man. And he goes, you know something, Alonzo? He said, you can't beat everybody with these. He's like, one of these days, someone's going to come with one of these. And I said, I got one of those too, Tony. I pulled up my shirt and I said, I'm a good shot with it too. But I was being funny, but I said it in a way. I said, yeah, I got one too. And I'm a good shot. I said, so if they come for me, they better get me. If they don't, then I'm going to get who sent them. And right then everybody gets quiet because it was one of those situations where it could have been taken wrong. Like maybe he thought I was talking about him. Like I was like, oh, whoever sent them, I'm going to get them. Yeah. But then Tony Jack starts laughing and calls me Patu La Para. He starts laughing. This freaking Patu La Para, what are you going to do with you, Alonzo? He's like, you don't think. And he starts talking nice to me. And he says, he's going to be fine. He tells Tony fine, blah, blah. And Tony after that started, talking to me again. He liked me. I think Tony liked it. He's like,
okay, so this is small change shit. Like you could see why the white collar mob doesn't like to be involved in haggling over $500 a week. Exactly. Who gives a fuck? Give us the good shit. Tell us about the yacht scam, dude. I give a fuck about this 1920s extortion.
That was just kind of to give you an idea how I became part of that world. You know what I'm saying? So the yacht scam was my Uncle Pete knows I can drive boats because I'm out fishing and stuff all the time. He says, listen to me. Your cousin, we'll call him Anthony. Yeah. Your cousin Anthony's having a birthday party at Metro Beach. His dad got him a gift and, blah, 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 blah. He's like, I need you to, can you drive a boat? I said, yeah, I can drive a boat. I know how to drive a boat. It's just a big boat. I'm like, I'm sure how hard can it be to drive a big boat? Freaking, I go to this party and there's all these kids and all these girls at Metro Beach. It's a huge party, right? Yeah. And everybody's getting drunk there. And at the end of the night, he says, in the morning, spend the night on the boat, but in the morning, you got to take it across the lake to Canada. And then I'm like, wait a minute here. I'm taking it to Canada. He's like, yeah. He's like, you're going to meet a guy named Frank. Here's his number. They actually had GPS back then. So he was able to get me. Yeah. But you got to go to this one marina, call him. The guy's name is Frank. He's going to come meet you. He's going to give you some money. Yeah. Right. And he's going to give you a boat to take back. I'm like, all right, cool.
Now, what about like Coast Guard? Like you're on Lake Michigan, right?
No, Lake St. Clair.
Okay. So you didn't worry about like
you
customs or anything
you
like
were
that?
worried about that.
Right.
But there wasn't that many of them. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of big boats. There's tons of boats on the lake. Tons of them.
Right.
And so, but I said, this thing is not reported yet, is it? He goes, what? No, what are you talking about reported? It's not stolen. I said, Uncle Pete, don't give me that bullshit, man. If it's reported, that's fine. I said, but I would prefer that you would wait till report it stolen until I get it over.
Of course.
He said he would, but I didn't trust him. I didn't trust him at all. I thought, man. So we partied on this boat all night and then wake up drunk and hungover. And I jumped on this big boat. Man, it's a big double-decker cabin cruiser, right?
Right.
So I'm way to freaking trying to drive. It was so hard to drive. But I was able to back it out and get it out of there and brought it across, and they gave me $8,000. And the $8,000 went to my cousin. That was his birthday present from his dad. That boat sold for $8,000. I mean, that's what he gave the kid. I don't know what it really was, but it was $8,000 for him. But so I said to the guy, this is where it gets interesting. I said to this guy, Frank, I said, you interested in more boats? He said, hell yeah. I'm like, what kind of boats? He's like, all boats. Any of these boats. Get some nice boats. So I go to
was Frank he's a Canadian
guy.
Was he also Sicilian?
Yeah, of course.
And do they have outfits? They were in Windsor. They have wise guys up there too.
Yeah, they're all part, but they're really just satellites
of Detroit. Yeah, okay.
Guys over there doing rackets. Right. So I go to one of my cousins and I said, bro, let's start stealing these boats. They're easy to steal. Right? Yeah. So okay, so we ended up going. We started at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, and there's like a guard shack out front. It's all beautiful with like landscaping. Mm-hmm. I would walk up and I go, how you doing? I'm Pete Toko's grandson. I said, I'm meeting somebody out here. Like, and I'd say Pier 8, Wharf 42. He'd be, oh, okay. Tell Pete I said hi.
Yeah.
We'll go back there and just steal the boat. We would go back there and drink. And when I was a kid, I'd take a bunch of girls and my boys and just pick a boat and jump on it and party. Crack the freaking the bar open and drink and get the music going all night, pass out drunk.
It's somebody in a stranger's boat.
Some strange boat. Yeah. Then we'd even take them out sometimes. And then we'd come back and we'd just leave in the morning.
Now, now you're here to steal them. Was there the key lying around? Like, how do you get the boat
They're
going?
really easy to steal. At least they were. You have to take a little panel out, so you need to screw a little panel out, pull it out, and they're there. And there's a plug,
like hot wiring a boat.
Yeah, that's what it was, hot wiring. But Frankie knew how to do it, not me.
Yeah,
but he was good. If sometimes they were really easy. Sometimes they had the keys in them, And
then you just brought these all across the lake to Frank.
Yeah,
on the other side.
So he was cashing us out.
And how much were you making per boat?
Not enough, man.
Right.
Probably $5,000 to $8,000. And these are boats that are worth $100,000,
right,
$200,000.
Right. Easy. Do you have to kick up to Uncle Pete, or does he know you're running this? Yeah.
But Tony finds out and he gets mad about it.
Now, is that an offense, running a scam without kicking up to the boss? Could that be a death sentence?
No, or that's just family. We're all family. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They don't look at it like that. With like, I'm going to kill my nephew. It's not Greg Scarpa or something. He was mad.
Yeah.
He's basically, he mother effed me. He put me in a room and said, what the frick are you doing?
Yeah.
Frank is my guy.
Yeah.
You're right. You know what I'm saying?
That is some bullshit. So you took his connect.
Yeah. So you're bringing all these boats over there. Frank is my guy. I said, well, he's only giving us $5,000 a boat. And if how much can I divide it up and still have it worth it? He's like, from now on, you go through me.
Yeah.
So we did a couple more and we only made like $2,000. I'm like, it ain't even worth it.
Right.
It ain't worth it.
But you can see again how the higher ups are making a killing because he's paying you $5,000 for a stolen boat and turning around and selling it for $100.
You know what they were doing? They were re-tagging them. And this is really ingenious how they were doing it. This is a perfect example of how smart the mafia is. Us little thugs in the street were like nothing.
Yeah.
These guys were taking these boats and what they were doing is re-tagging them, renumber them, and they were doing what's called like ghost duplicates. So there's a boat just like that boat with an ID number and serial number of X. Mm-hmm. They would just take that and duplicate it. So as long as you paid to get everything, your sticker and everything every year, nobody would ever know that there's two of them out there. Same boat, same everything, but there's just two of them. So if you get stopped, you're all legal. Cops never going to know that this one's not really.
Right.
So that's it. So they sold all these boats in Canada.
And that's how a civilian in Canada could buy a boat and never know, and never have it reported stolen, and never
know that he bought a stolen boat.
Right. Wow.
And these boats are, like you said, 100,000, 150,000. Some of them are race boats. It's just crazy money. They're just giving us peanuts.
Right. Okay. So we've got extortion. We've got theft. What about the burglary? This is a fascinating racket.
A definitely fascinating racket. I was in the gym Met this guy who worked for ADT Alarms, right? Kind of a square.
Yeah. And this is in Grosse Pointe, right?
Well, the gym was in St. Clair Shores, right next to Grosse Pointe.
Okay,
right?
gotcha.
So he's just kind of a square, kind of big muscle bound guy, and I'm feeling him out, and I say, "Man, listen, we can make some money if you can get. Can you get me the cheat codes that circumvent the alarms?" He's like, "Dude, I can do anything. I can deactivate them. I tell you how to deactivate them. I tell you how to fry them. I can tell you everything. I even give you the code. I can even tell you when somebody's not home because they tell us." Listen, I'm going on vacation for a month. So if the alarm goes off, it's real. Because a lot of people open their door and they're half asleep and it goes off. And oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No. He's like, no, we'll be gone for a month. So they have a database that says, hey, these people are gone. And though the alarms are easy to bypass, you know what you're freaking doing.
Yeah.
You can fry them so there's no memory and nothing, bro. That's what we do. Fry them. So I wasn't a guy who broke in the house. I wasn't alarmed. I was a driver. I drove the crash car and had the radio. So I had a radio in the front seat, in case cops or hear any radio chatter. And these guys would go in there. You got a box man, always a safe guy, and like one or two guys. And these guys would go into these big Grosse Pointe houses and sometimes warehouses and other things. They would go in there for freaking hours, man.
Yeah.
Hours. Like there were times where I can't get this safe open. We got to take it out of there. We're like rolling the safe down the front lawn at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Taking your time.
Just trying to get it out of there, right? And it's almost funny. They pull a van up and they load up this van and then they go. And this went on for about probably a year. And I was
Do you remember the biggest score? Is there like a real lick that you remember that stands out?
There was a couple, there was more than one couple that was like 30, 40,000 in cash and probably 100,000 in jewelry.
Yeah.
There's multiple times.
Did you have a fence? Did you have a guy?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with this next.
Okay, cool.
So my cut from this, I get to pick one piece of jewelry, just one. And of course, my uncle had points in a pawn shop, so I learned about jewelry and gold and watches from them. And watches are always the gold, like the highest value. So if you know what you're looking for,
more watches more than chains.
Oh yeah, way more.
Gotcha.
Depending, I mean, you can watch. There are certain watches if you know the brand, it can be worth $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. Now it changes gold, it's meltdown. So I'd pick a watch. So I started collecting watches, and at one point I had like 25 freaking watches, And then when I went to prison, I told my girl to cash them in or whatever. And anyway, so the fence, so my uncle and his boy, this is an interesting story. They had this is what I did, what's called the pawn shop swap. So we were getting all this jewelry and merchandise, some electronics, jewelry, merchant guns, lots of stuff like that. But you can't just sell it at the pawn shop, 5 miles down the road because the cops come in there and they do an audit of this stuff and they see what's been stolen recently, whatever. So we had associates in Chicago from the outfit, mob guys from Chicago. They had a pawn shop and they had the same thing. They had a larceny crew and they're stamina. So we had a warehouse on Mount Elliott that was just loaded up with stolen merch, like fur coats and even like bows, anything that we get money for.
Yeah.
And then we load it up in a truck and take it down to them. But yeah, that was our fence in Chicago.
So the majority of stolen goods that get burglarized actually move through legitimate outlets like pawn shops.
Yeah. There's another guy. I'll get in that steroid thing in a minute. We need to do that. But this guy named Joe, he owned a shop, a jewelry shop. He was like the high end fence.
And let me ask you this: so the pawn shop owners and the jewelry store owners obviously know that they're taking in stolen goods. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And how did you trust them? You just knew. You just know.
Yeah,
you know when a guy's in.
They're one of us.
Yeah. They're usually either connected or they're actually made guys.
They're just part of the family. They're part of the crew. They're part of this. This is Joe DiMaggio. How I met him. Oh, geez.
Hold on, we'll get into this because I want to talk about before we get into the steroid racket, which was probably one of your more successful hustles. But let's hear about collections and tell us about the first time that you collected for Tony Jack and basically got in his good graces.
Well, I think I should tell you the story how I freaking beat the guy's Gumar up, and then that's how I got in his good graces.
Yeah.
So I'm fresh out of jail from selling steroids. I did 6 months of county jail. Ended up at my cousin Nina's graduation party. My grandfather was sitting there with Tony Jack and says, "Can you find him some work?" But they're speaking in Italian, but I heard my name Alonzo, so I'm picked up.
Yeah.
And then he says, "Can you get him work?" And Tony says, "Yeah, I'll see what I can do." And then Tony got me a job bouncing at a nightclub, this really high-end nightclub. Like it was mobbed up. It was basically the biggest mob club on the east side, you know. But I was just 20-year-old kid, so I was just, you know, I was meeting them and coming to know.
Were you getting tipped? Like were people fleecing you with 20s and 40s to get in?
No,
like
I would
Goodfellas?
never charge them to get in. That'd be disrespectful.
Yeah.
And these guys would come in and kiss me on the cheek.
Yeah.
Cousin Alonzo, they hug me and kiss me. You never ask them for money.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
No, I thought they don't just tip you for favors?
No,
because
that's like a family thing. You know, charging your family would be insulting. You know what I'm saying? They'd come in and kiss you and let me in.
Yeah.
But I was getting to know a lot of these guys, you know, who I didn't know. They're cousins and uncles, and a lot of them are older. You know, they're 30, 40, 50 years old. I'm a 20-year-old kid. But they knew Tony Jack got me the job there. So I got a little juice because of that. I was a tough kid, constantly fighting. I was well known as the kid, like knocking mother effers out all the time. Always fighting, always knocking guys out, always in trouble. And it was just, they all knew, they all talked. So Tony says, one day I get a call at 7:00 in the morning and my grandmother yells down the stairs. She's like, Tony's on the phone. I said, Tony who? Because I had cousins and stuff. It's like, Tony Jack. The way she said it, she didn't like Tony Jack. She didn't like him because he knew he was a gangster. It's like, Tony Jack. And like, she didn't want me having anything to do with him. So I pick up the phone. I said, Tony, he don't answer. And he waits for my grandmother to like hang up upstairs. He says, listen, man, I need a favor. I said, sure, Tony, anything. What's the problem? He says, listen, this guy showed up. This girlfriend of mine, he didn't say my girlfriend, his girlfriend of mine, her ex showed up drunk last night, slapped her around. He's passed out at the house. He's only a couple miles from you. You think you can handle this? I said, sure, I can handle it. I know what she's saying. I know what you're saying.
This is the first favor that Tony's ever asked of you.
Yeah, he asked me to punk out some kids for his that were picking on his nephew previously, and I did that. I went in the backyard and said, bitch, I'll beat everybody's ass and punk them out. But this is like the first real thing. So he says, it's 7:00 in the morning. He says, you think you can handle this? I said, yeah. And he's like, you sure you can handle this? I said, yeah, Tony. I laughed. I said, yeah, Tony, I got this. No problem. He's like, all right, let me know how it goes. So I hang up the phone. I call my workout partner. His name is Dario. And I tell him, listen, get your gloves on. We got work. And he says, first thing he says, do I need my piece? I was like, no, just to bring up a freaking baseball bat or a pool stick or something. And I hang up. He's like, I'll be there in 5 minutes. So he comes and gets me up. And I put this huge gold ring on, which is the funny thing, this massive gold ring, which has a crazy story behind it. I should tell that one day. But anyway, so I go up to this, knock on this door, and the chick opens the door, and I'm like, where's the guy? And she's like, in the bedroom. Long story short, I just pulverized this dude. I mean, I hurt him really bad. I fucked him up, bro. Like this face bad.
Did he give you an envelope for that, or you just did it on the strength?
I just did it on the strength. Yeah. Because again, it's like family. He gave me money though down the road. But then the next time he said, "Listen, I got some friend who's got some work for you, and you need to help him out." I said, "Okay." And I mean, I met him at Dimitri's, right? And the way he said it, he wrote the number down. I thought it was like a legit job, like instruction or something. He said his name is Johnny. So I said, all right, meet the guy. So I walk in, I see him, I sit down. I'm like, what's the job? I said, I hope it ain't concrete. I hate concrete. He goes, the fuck are you talking about, man? He's like, no, man. I got a kid who owes me 10 grand. He ain't paying. Some punk. He's like you, a young kid, big tough guy. He thinks he's tough. Told me to F off. He ain't paying. So I go, I said, well, where's the kid? How much is it? He's like, 8,000. He owes me 8,000 what it was.
Yeah. And
I said, all right, 8,000. Where is he? She's like, here's his work, here's his house, here's whatever. I went to his house, he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I went to his girl, he wasn't there. I went to his work, he was there.
It's over a gambling debt?
Yeah, gambling.
Okay.
He was gambling.
Is this when numbers still existed?
They had numbers still. Yeah,
okay. The numbers don't exist anymore.
They might do numbers, yeah, in certain like areas, black communities,
right,
down in the market.
Still, that's so
crazy.
In 2023, numbers are still
They just
cooking.
go around from store to store to store to store.
Right.
And people win all the time, so there's good money.
Right. That's fascinating. I still don't understand the numbers, but we'll get into it. So let me hear how you collect off a guy.
So this guy, I go and I walk into this like warehouse, big warehouse. They had something going on. I think they sold wholesale food or something. And I asked him, I'm looking for Marty so-and-so. I can't say his name. And the woman says, who are you? I said, this is somebody looking for Marty so-and-so. Is he here? She says, he's somewhere. So they page him, and he comes walking up. I said, I need to have a word with you, bro. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to fight this guy. Like I'm thinking he's a big muscle-bound kid. He's a little older than me. He probably can get tough. Like if he told Johnny Nev to F off, and I think Johnny Nev probably said, I book for Tony Jack. And if you're telling me to F off, you're telling Tony to F off.
Right.
This guy's like F Tony too.
Yeah.
I don't know who Tony is. I don't give a shit. So I basically pulled him outside. I said, hey, man, you got a big freaking problem. He's like, what? I said, this money you owe Johnny Nev. He's like, I'm going to pay him. I'm going to get paid when I pay him. I said, no, you're going to pay him now. You got to pay him now because this problem ain't going away. I said, I'm here to get the money. I said, if we can't get this worked out today, right now, then the next guy who comes, you won't see him coming.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying? I said, you know who Tony Jack is? Tony Giacalone? He says, yeah. I said, that's who sent me. It wasn't Johnny Nev who sent me. Tony sent me. So you have a problem, bro. It's going to get a lot worse. And you're going to, either you're going to fuck this up and have a really big problem, or you got to figure it out. Go to your aunt, your dad, your mom. I don't care who it is. Get this money. What he did, by the way, he double dipped because Johnny Nev brought him a loan shark from the racetrack, the Hazel Park racetrack, and said, borrow him the money to pay me off, so I'm done with him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Well, the loan shark gave him $8,000 to pay Johnny Nev off, and the kid took that money and gambled somewhere else with it.
Yeah.
So he lost both. So now he screwed both these guys over.
Yeah.
This is where the problem comes in. You can't do this. So I said, who's got the money, man? Because you got a big problem, really big problem. And he didn't get tough. He didn't do nothing. He's just looking at me. He thinks for a minute. He's like, I don't got it. I mean, you got anything you sell? You got a boat? You got toys, four-wheelers, whatever? He's like, I got nothing, man. I gambled it all away. I said, well, who's got money? Look at this big freaking business here. Somebody's got some money, man. He says, hold on a second. So he walks over to the phone on the counter and he dials it up. And he says, Dad, I'm in big trouble. I got a problem. I need $8,000. Please don't ask questions. I'll explain to you later. I'll pay you back. But for now, I just need the money. Okay. Yes. Boom. Thanks. He hangs up. Guy says, all right, I'm going to go get the money. I said, you ain't going without me. I pulled a pistol right there. I said, you ain't going out without me. And he looks at the pistol. He's like, come on, it ain't that serious, bro. It is that serious. Let's get it. So I said, you drive, get in the car. So I kind of held the pistol on him the whole time. I was cool with him. I was really cool. I wasn't like a jerk off with him. And then he went and got the money, brought me to $8,000. And I called Johnny Nev, like I beeped him. This is back when beepers I beeped Johnny Nev. He says, I'm at Mr. Paul's Chop House, this like famous mob hangout steakhouse. And I said, all right, I'm going to come see you. I'm there. So I come in there and I said, I talk to you in the bathroom. I walk in the bathroom and I was like, here you go. Here's your money. He looked at it like, you motherfucker, you've been gone for 4 hours. You got the money.
Yeah.
What'd you do? I said, I got it. I get the money. He's like, well, here's your $800. I got 10%. So you give me $800.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always that easy, but that was the first time I collected for him.
Right. So it sounds like the way that the mafia and the modern world works in a city like Detroit, it's a loose association of people, hustlers that have different hustles, whether you're a loan shark, whether you're a bookmaker, whether you're a drug dealer. And if there's an issue, if somebody owes you money, you kick up to the boss so you can go to him if you have a problem and say, I need you to go take care of this. Then the boss taps another loose associate, a strong man like you, to go collect.
Exactly. It's all one thing. So.
Now, was that guy specifically, Johnny, the bookie, was he
paying Tony?
Yeah, of course he was paying Tony, but did he work for Tony or that was his own business?
No, he worked for Tony. So Tony ran all the bookies.
Okay. So they're not independent. They're directly working for Tony.
You, when you set out to be a bookie in Detroit, you only can work for Tony.
Right.
Like if you try to be independent, someone like me is going to show up and go, right, you got to pay.
Now, what about the loan sharking? Let's talk about that really quick.
Exact same thing.
So if you want to set up a loan shark, say I got $100,000 in cash and I want to start a loan sharking business in Detroit, I got to ask permission first before I even
back then,
open the books.
I don't know how it is now, but back then, if they found out you were loaning money out to bookies and degenerates, they would have made you pay.
So that's essentially how you start working for the mob. You don't work for them unless it's bloodline. You really only get made if you're related, either by blood or by marriage. But you work with and for them by asking permission to open up shop.
Yeah, well, they see guys like me or yourself or whatever would get to know a certain guy. Like let's say I had a crew of 4 or 5 guys that were all thugs and gangsters and drug dealers and whatever. And I bring them around, the Eastern Market. I bring them to my grandparents' house. I bring them to hang out with my uncle. So everybody's familiar with these guys. Right. They're gangsters. And then one of them says to my Uncle Pete, listen, I got this thing going. I want to start a book or I want to do this. And then he'd be like, okay, yeah. And he's like, how do I, they'll basically explain, you're going to be under me now. Okay. And I'm going to be under Tony. So you got to give me 10%, 5 to Tony, 10 to me, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And we'll protect you. Obviously nobody's going to come and try to extort you. But if they did try to do it, like a loan shark.
Right.
And I've done that. I like Chaldeans. There's a couple of Chaldean loan sharks.
What's Chaldean?
They're Arabic mobsters.
Oh, right.
And they're gangster too.
Right. Cause there are a lot of Muslims in, what's the neighborhood?
They're actually Dearborn.
Dearborn, yeah.
But they're not, these guys are Christians. They're Christian Iraqis. And they have their own mafia. Look it up. They're powerful. They're gangsters. But there was a couple young ones, and I kind of extorted them, because I could, you know what I'm saying? But eventually, they went and got one of their high-ranking mob guys to go to one of my uncle and tell him. So they were still kicking up, but instead of kicking up to me, they were just kicking up to their uncle. Yeah. And they got me to get rid of me. They'd rather pay their uncle than me for extortion. But anyway, so yeah, everybody's...
Now, what about you specifically, since you are related by blood, directly, your steroid hustle when you were still a teenager, right? Or your early 20s. Tell us about that, because this is like a big kind of pivotal moment for you. This is when you almost caught like a real case.
Yeah. So when I was like 15, 16, I was about 16 years old, I started working out because I wanted to get bigger for the girls. And of course you think, steroids will help. How do you find some steroids? So I got hooked up with these guys that sell steroids. There's a kid who lived across the street from me, hung around these freaking lunatics. These 3 huge mother effers, huge, right? One, Mike McCauley, was a maniac, and these 2 dudes named Dave. And they were selling me steroids, but I think like it was all fake. So I brought it to like a real expert guy I met in the gym, right? And they're like, man, that's some bullshit. Like, here. And I said, can you get me a deal? This guy named Jerry. Jerry was still in high school. And how I met him was he was going to high school with my sister. So I say to him, I get on an exercise bike at the gym next to him because I know he's the plug. And I say, Jerry, I said, I think you know my sister. And he's this big, giant mother effer, man. Benching 500 pounds in high school. Still in high school.
That's insane.
Yeah. Dude, huge. And he looks over at me.
There's no way he's alive today.
Yeah, I don't know where he is alive, but I don't think he's on the gym. But
organs are failing.
He's one of those guys I feel like if he is alive, it's a miracle just because how crazy he was.
Of course.
But he said, he looked at me, he goes, who's your sister? I'm like, Anne-Marie Lindbloom. He stops, he looks at me, that's your sister? I'm like, yeah. He's like, dude, everybody wants a piece of that ass because my sister's beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I said, so listen, man, Dave Demers, Dave DeAugustine, those guys? And he's like, yeah. And like, they've been selling me some bullshit, but I think it's fake. I think it's bullcrap. And he goes, oh yeah, like fake garbage. I said, man, I got all these buyers, man. Like at my high school, these kids at the gym, all these people. I need a plug. He says, all right, man, come to my, here's my number. Call me. He'll come over to my house. So we started dealing together, right?
Yeah. So but who was the plug though?
Well, I'm getting there. That's what I'm saying. He was the plug at this point. And so I start to realize that the plug was this dude named Joe D. We'll call him Joe D. I can say Joe DiMaggio, but it's in the paper. Everybody knew about. But this was
his post baseball career.
Not that guy. No, same name though. So this guy Joe DiMaggio was this big, short, stocky, muscle-bound mother. At the time, he was only 29, but to me, that was like an old man.
Of course,
I'm like 17 years old, so he was an old guy. And so I knew he was the plug, and his whole crew of these giant gorillas, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was like the smallest guy in the gym. Legitimately, I was the smallest guy in the gym, like 140 pounds, maybe 150. And so Jerry's hooking me up, but I'm not taking steroids. Like, I'd rather have the money. So if I got whatever, I was like selling it. Like, forget it, I don't need it. I've got pretty good genetics. Yeah. I'm working out. I'm kind of blowing up natural. F this. I'd rather have $100, $200, $300 for the whatever. So one day Jerry says, listen, I'm leaving to go to California. I got a baseball scholarship. I'm like, dude, I'm making all this money from the steroids. Like, at this point, I'm selling a lot of weed too. Not a lot, but probably 5 pounds of weed a week. Yeah. And now I'm making another like maybe $1,500 a week from steroids.
Just selling to people at your high school.
Oh, no, other gyms and other high schools. All the other high schools around. Roseville, Fraser, East Detroit. I knew those guys because they all went to the same gyms. And I was like, yo, all these football players. And they all were just like, here's my money. Give me.
Everybody is just buying drugs in that city, man. Everybody is just buying dope. That's crazy.
Wait till you hear what happens next. So by this point, I got a Mustang GT that's all pimped out with a pull-out Alpine limousine tint kickers in it, low profile. And I pull up and so Jerry says, I'm going to hook you up with Joe before I go. Joe the plug. I said, okay, cool, man. You got to do it though, because I got all this money, all these orders piling up. He forgets me and goes off to college. I got $5,000-$10,000 worth of steroids. I'm like, I gotta strap my balls on and approach Joe in the gym. It takes a lot of balls. You know, you're 17 years old to walk up to like this drug king. And by the way, to me, because he was Italian and his crew was all Dagos. No, I just automatically assumed that he was a higher mid-level wise guy coming up.
Of course,
he's a mafioso.
Of course,
he dressed and acted like. So I approached him with the highest level of respect. And so I go up to him. And I said, Joe, can I have a word with you in the locker room? He looks at me, this big, huge motherfucker. I'm so little. Yeah. He says, looks at me. I said, yeah. He's like, I know you. He's like, he seen me in the gym, so he knew me. He said, yeah. So we walk in. I said, Joe, listen, this is where it gets funny. Because I said, all that stuff that Jerry was buying from you, it was for me, which was a total lie. Because Jerry was pumping. But Jerry was pumping like a lot. And I was just buying like a fraction of his market, but I made it sound like I was make it. Yeah. So Joe, I was like, all the stuff Jerry's buying was for me. I said, but now he's in California at school. I mean, I got orders piling up, blah, 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 blah. And he says, first thing I said was, Joe, I think you know my Uncle Pete. He's like, Pete who? I said, Pete Tocco. He says, Pete Tocco, this one? I said, no, Pete Tocco, Peter Paul Tocco Jr. He says, got like a bunch of sisters. I said, yeah, one of them's my mom, my sister, and my mother, Grace Tocco. I said, yeah, I know them. I know Pete, doing real good. Good guy, solid. I said, yeah, that's my uncle. So I got in right away. As soon as he said he knew my uncle, I knew I was in.
Why didn't you drop Uncle Jack?
I didn't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to because it's all connected.
Yeah.
I'm so young, man. If I say Uncle Jack, 17 years old, then now it's just name dropping.
Yeah.
Like just because I know Uncle Jack's the boss.
Right. You're not in with him yet.
Nah, you're not going to throw a boss's name around when you're 17 years old. But my Uncle Pete, I could throw that name and he jumped right on it. So he says, here's my number. Come to my house. He lives in Roseville. And I go to his house and he opens the door and he says, come on, sit down for a second in this little anteroom. And I got to finish up with a meeting with this guy. And this big giant freaking dude is in there, huge. And the guy, he's got like a paper bag filled with steroids. And then the guy leaves and he says, come into my office. I go in his office and he says, open the safe. I open the safe. It's almost like a walk-in safe. This huge, massive safe, huge. And I walk and in it is like, I don't know, man, maybe 5,000 bottles of steroids. And
are you talking testosterone?
Yeah, different kinds, all different kinds. So there's like 20 different kinds, and there's like each shelf's got 100 bottles here.
Wow.
And there was a bunch of weed and there's a bunch of coke in there too.
And it's liquid capsules, right?
Some was liquid, some was pills. So there was pills, there was pills, there was liquid, there was everything.
You just found the plug, the connect.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. The connect. And he's like, well, what do you need? I'm like, well, look, what do you got? He's like, listen, just take whatever you want and just pay me when you got the money. How's that for? And I'm like, hell yeah. So I didn't want to be greedy.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I'm like, right. I put like $5,000 in a bag, you know?
Wow.
And he marks it in this ledger.
Yeah.
He's got this ledger. He puts my name, Al, and then like 20 bottles of test, 20 bottles of Anavar, 20 bottles of, and I was like, yeah, shake his hand, boom, I'm out. So now about once a week, I'm over his house dumping this money.
Picking it up again.
And I look, dude, I'm all dressed up. I even turned my kicker down when I drove down the street.
So how much are you now? Now you're on. How much are you moving every week?
Well, I was probably moving about 5 G's worth of steroids a week.
And how much does each vial go for?
Well, I could get like a bottle of testosterone for like $40 and sell it for $120.
Wow. So
you're Mark triple.
Yeah, you're tripling your money.
The fake steroids were the best money.
So off of 5 G's, how much are you keeping profit?
Well, I'd probably make 5 G's a week.
Wow. Yeah. So what's the full re-up? How much are you bringing back to him?
Well, to make 5 G's, I'd probably get about 2,000 maybe. So I'd take 2,000 investment to make 5,000 profit.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how many sales? So this is an incredible amount of sales.
Nonstop.
Nonstop.
These guys are stupid. These listen, this is how
you're selling them to meatheads and football players and people at the gyms.
This is what I'd say. They're like, I want a cycle. I'm like, how much money you got? And they're like, and then the more money you spend, the better the cycle. So I'll make the cycle for you. You just tell me what you got. I got 700. Okay, I'll give you 3 bottles of test this, boom, boom, boom. And that's it.
Yeah.
Bottles of that. Yeah. And so I just give them, but dude, I was scamming. What I'm saying is this is where the real Italian kind of scumbag scammer comes in. They were making counterfeit bottles of steroids that looked so real, bro. They were absolutely real, but there was this cottonseed oil in them. Even the labels with the lot numbers, the crimping was perfect.
Wow.
And I could get those for like $5, $10 and sell them for $100.
Were you also getting that from the same plug?
Same plug.
Wow.
He'd tell me. Like,
Wow.
this is fake, this is real.
Yeah.
If this is for you or your boys, get the real stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're selling just a flip, get the junk, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And mark it up. People don't know. Here's the thing. If you're a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, right? And I give you a placebo, testosterone, fake testosterone, I said, this is only going to work if you eat good and work out.
Yeah.
so if you eat good and work out, you're going to blow up. And they're like, okay, boom. They come back freaking 8 weeks later going, man, this stuff was awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
And actually, you're doing them a favor because you're not
Right.
giving them anything that's
It's
harming their
poison,
body,
right,
and
right.
you're motivating them to get healthy.
natural.
Yeah.
You're doing it natural.
Wow. So they're paying you $120 for a
vial.
$5 fake vial that you paid for.
Yeah. And
wow.
all day. And some guys would spend $2,000-3,000. I had some.
So you were just, what's at your height? How much money did you have? What was that business worth?
I don't know.
As a 17-year-old kid, did you make 100,000 off
I had
that?
more than 100,000. I had in cash. I think I had 70 G's under my bed, but I had an NFL guy buying juice from me too, and he was great.
For the Lions?
Yeah, I can't say his name.
Wow.
I can't say his
Barry
name.
Sanders.
No,
Come on,
no,
we all know.
This guy, he was a long snap center, but he was freaking.
And Dominican Sue. That's a Portland, Oregon
He
reference.
was buying. He was awesome because I
Joey
charged,
Harrington. Sorry.
I would charge him like $4,000 for like a $500 cycle.
Wow.
And he's like right there. I'm
so
like,
you're a teenager with huge money. Are you still selling weed, or did you leave that alone?
My weed was my main thing.
You were making more money even than the steroids.
Weed
were
was
bringing.
my main racket.
Now, did the wise guys find out, and were you kicking up, or?
My Uncle Pete tried to make me pay more.
But you're already kicking. You're already paying the guy who's kicking up.
Yeah, my
to
Uncle Pete.
the wise guys. So why would you have to pay again? It
tried.
seems like an unnecessary tax.
He tried to get me to pay more because it was a steroid thing.
Yeah.
But at that point, I was basically F you to. I'm like, I'm not in the mob. I don't give a shit
Right.
about that.
And you're also supplying a guy. You're also hustling and making money for a guy that's probably kicking upstairs to the mob anyways. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, Joe.
Right.
Was,
That's what
So-
I mean. And by the way, these steroids, the real shit, probably coming from Canada, right?
Well, it's coming from all over the world, man.
Legal steroids.
No, listen, so I'll tell you how it ended.
Oh yeah, let's
But
hear it.
like the fake steroids, when I got greedy, that's how I ended up getting busted. Some dude I used to buy weed from like a couple years ago. I seen him at a club and I'm kind of buffed up, and he's like, "Hey man, give some steroids." I said, "Yeah." He's like, "I got a guy. He looking for some steroids." So he hooks me up with the guy, and I said, "Listen, all I can get is methyl test, which is garbage. It's what power lifters use before they work out. It's not going to build nothing. It's just." And the guy's like, "Oh, I'll take a methyl test." I'm like, "It's kind of weird." I'm like, "All right, how much money you got?" "Oh, I'm as much as you can get." And I sell it to him for $5,000. And boom, 2 days later, he calls me back and says, "Bro, I sold that to my boy at work. Can I get some more?" So I do it again, right? Dummy. The guy was a cop. So
Yeah.
But so what happens is, because I was young and stupid.
Detroit guy. He wasn't a Fed though.
No, not a Fed. It was a comic narcotics task force guy.
Yeah,
They have a drug task force.
Yep.
And so, anyways, so one day I go into the gym. I come walk into the gym. I got my pull-out Alpine. There was this, and I walk up to the counter. And as I'm walking through the gym, there's a funny vibe about it. Like I could just feel something went right. People were looking at me, and everybody knew I was a little drug dealer.
Yeah.
The whole freaking place knew I was in with Joe. They
Yeah.
knew I was a drug dealer. I pulled up bumping in my mouth.
Is Joe in the gym on this day?
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
No, he was on getting bonded out. But I walked into the gym, but everybody knew I was tight with Joe. You know what I'm saying? And as I walked in, the chick at the counter says, "You hear about Joe?" I'm like, "Why? What happened to Joe?" She's like, "He got raided last night. He's in jail." And I'm like, and it just, my heart drops because all I can think about is all that money.
Mhm.
Like I'm making all this freaking money. Anyways, so it turns out Joe was being investigated by the FBI for like 2 years. And they had everything wired up, surveillance on his house. He was cooked, man. There was 55 guys involved, 3 different countries, 8 different states. They had like 30 million doses is what they called it.
Yeah.
30 million doses of steroids, over 100 weapons, 2 kilos of cocaine, 10,000 rounds of ammunition.
Holy shit.
All these guys, it was a RICO. They got them all. They got
everybody.
There's
Yeah.
55 guys.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so this happens, and I'm just like, whoa, what the frick? So I called Joe. So I come into the house, and he's like this. He's like, "Come on, let's go walk the dog," because he raised Rottweilers. So he had like 4 Rottweilers. He says, walk the dogs. So we're walking the dogs. I go, "What happened, man?" He's like, "It's over." All he said was, "It's over. They got me." And he's like, "You're in the ledger. So if they ask you about, whatever," he's like, "You're a little small time guy, but whatever, don't worry." And then this is first thing out of my mouth was like, "Is there anything left?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, yeah, Tony Bomarito's got a couple cases then. And he's like, go call him and, I'll have him hook you up. And, but it's basically, it's over. I was like, damn. So then like the next day, big tall guy like you is knocking on my door. The guy ended up looking just like my parole officer. And he's an FBI agent. He says, I got to talk to you. I'm with the FBI. I'm shitting my pants. You know what I'm saying? I walk into my kitchen. My dad is not home. It's just me. I said, take a seat. He got the ledger. He's got the freaking ledger.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, there's 2 L's in here. We know you're one of them. He's like, one of them was getting like, 50, 60, 80, $100,000 at a time. One was getting 5, 10 grand. I said, yeah, I'm in. I'm the little guy. I'm the 5.
Put me down for the 5.
That's the little guy. I just was getting it from my friends in high school and a few guys at the gym.
Yeah.
And he goes, that's what I figured, whatever. And I said, am I going to be indicted over this? He's like, no, we'll be in touch. We may be back. But they questioned me. I was like, what do you know everything. He's like, there's nothing you can ask me. He's like, yeah, we got you on surveillance, coming and going.
Right.
We got freaking 50 pictures of you carrying a bag out of his house.
Right.
Coming and going. So no big deal. So anyways, then like the next day, this is a funny story. I was getting ready to go to the gym and my boy's parked in front of my house rolling a joint. He's going to drive to the gym. My boy, Mark, he's just a yuppie, pretty boy, kind of like straight shooter square. Right? Yeah. And all of a sudden, a dude walks up to the car and freaking leather jacket, sunglasses, got a couple beeper and a gun. he's like, is Al home? And my boy's like rolling. He said, what? I came out of nowhere. And he said, I don't know. I'm waiting for him. So there was 2 of them. One of them comes walking up and I come walking out of the door at that point, carrying my gym bag. And they go, Al Lindbloom, I presume. I said, yeah. He's like, well, I got bad news, man. You're under arrest for conspiracy to deliver anabolic steroids on these dates. And I'm like, I knew the dates, that methyl test bullshit. And I'm like, I said, that stuff was fake. And he says, no, it wasn't. It proved to be real in the lab. But even if it was fake, you sold it under the pretense that it was real. It's the same thing.
Right.
You got to go. So we got to take you in. I'm like,
and that was for the city. That was
Detroit State.
Detroit City. Yeah.
It was a comic narcotics task force. So they got me. And so
you beat the feds decided to not put you in the RICO. Thank God. You were just a little 17-year-old pissant, even though you're making a lot of money for 17
not
years
like
old.
those guys though. But
But so what ended up happening to them?
So
they all caught Fed cases. They all
got Fed cases. Joe, this is how big they were. So Joe got a big shot lawyer and he paid like $700,000 for this lawyer. And the lawyer was like, oh, you're going to get 5 years and blah, blah, blah. He says, fuck you, man. You're fired. He paid $1 million for another lawyer. Paid $1 million.
Wow.
And got that lawyer and he ended up in prison for a 9-month like boot camp and like in the tether for 5 years.
Now, do you think that's the lawyer used some of that money to pay off the right people?
Probably.
It's got to be, right?
Gotta be. Yeah, probably.
Because, that kind of, it's not like selling, heroin, but steroids is Schedule 1, I believe.
They don't give a shit, man. Money's money, dude. Listen, when Jack Tocco, Giacomo Tocco, the boss of the Detroit Mob, was indicted for RICO in 1996, he was convicted of being the leader of the Detroit Mafia for 39 years. Leading the Mafia for 39. You are convicted.
Yeah.
The conspiracies to do murders and all these conspiracies and all. They gave him 1 year in jail.
That's insane.
Yeah. And then the prosecutor appealed it and said, that's not enough. He needs to do more time. They bring him back to the same judge and the same judge gives him 9 more months and like a
how's that possible though, Al? How's that possible?
He bought him.
Yeah, but when you have mandatory minimums,
they buy the judge does what he wants.
How do you? But that doesn't make any sense.
Judge does what he wants.
But the mandatory minimums are literally not letting the judge do what they want.
He does. They did.
I don't know. I got to look into that.
Look it up.
It's just unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. It's very public.
Unbelievable.
It's very public. The story is, it's very stuff.
Well, they must not have got him on any dope then.
No, they got him just on RICO.
Because if you get caught with 5 kilos of coke and you're on the statute,
there was no dope.
There's literally nothing. A judge would never stick his neck out.
But this is a federal judge in a RICO case, and it was really more about gambling.
Yeah.
The name of the operation called Game Tax. So those about basically conspiring to do all this gambling and loansharking or whatever. And he was the leader of it, right? And they convicted him of it, and he only got a year. And then they gave him another 9 months. So, and then, by the way, he used to write letters to my grandpa. My grandpa would read them to me.
Yeah.
Like, Uncle Jack sent me a letter, and he's like,
wow,
it's gravy in here. It's not even a fence. I can leave and go if I want.
Yeah.
I can have women. And he's like, I get to go to my office. I get to leave the prison, and I rented an office space so I could go drive to my office and sit in the office till 6 in the afternoon and drive back to my little dorm.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Keep the mic.
When the guy's worth $100 million or whatever he was, he bribed and bought whoever.
Yeah.
So Joe DiMaggio ended up doing, I think, just several months. I ended up getting busted for the two-hand deliveries.
Yeah.
And that's when my grandfather bribed the judge.
Right.
So
10 grand.
10 grand. He went in there and gave the judge 10 grand and said, I don't want my grandson to go to prison.
Yeah.
And the judge, and I'm going to say the judge's name. His name is Jeanette, which is short for Giannetti. He shortened his Sicilian name.
Wow.
His name is Giannetti. He's dead now. That's why I can say his name.
Right.
So he just gave him 10 grand. The judge says, yeah, no problem. They actually moved me to his venue, and then boom. And I got county time. I got 6 months in the county time work release, but I got kicked out of work release in like 2 weeks. Got kicked out of work release because I was doctored up my schedule so I can try to get laid. Yeah. And then I got in a fight. Some dude took my cookie off my tray, and I jumped over the table and just freaking started beating his ass. But then I did my time, and that's when I got out of jail. That's when Tony Jack came at me.
Right. And then now you're out of jail, you're about 18, and you kind of get ingratiated with Tony Jack and his world, the world of the wise guys. Now the next 10 years are basically you making money, losing money, extorting. I'm supposed to ask you about a few things. When's the first time you got shot at?
I was robbing a guy of a quarter kilo of heroin. And this guy I've been dealing with for a while. He was a Chaldean guy, but he was kind of cocky and he got on my nerves. And that's usually how it worked. Like if I didn't like a guy, I would get into his good graces and then I'd rob him. And this guy was kind of a cocky douchebag. I'm like, I'm tired of dealing with him. I'm just going to rob him. Mm-hmm. A quarter kilo of heroin is $20,000. So I'm like, I'm going to get this freaking guy for 20 G's. And so I tell him to meet me in the hood, and we park. He gets out, hands me the thing. I throw it in the back of my car, and I take him 20 grand. I hand him, and we're talking, and like he's smoking a cigarette, and he puts the money in his inside pocket, and then he's like, "All right, man, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go." And as he goes to turn around and go, I grab him by the jacket and pull my gun, put the gun in his face. I said, "Give me the jacket, mother effer." He goes, "Are you serious, bro?" I said, "Dead serious, man. This could be it for you, man. This could be the last day, man. Don't make it the last day. You can make it up."
Were you ready to squeeze when you rob somebody like that?
I mean, always ready if I had to, but I wasn't planning to. I didn't want to, you know what I'm saying?
Of course.
I wasn't like a sociopath. I was just trying to scare him. But I just let him know, listen, I ain't playing, man. Freaking, desperate times, desperate measures. So he says, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yeah." So he starts peeling out of his jacket, but I don't know how he does it. But as he peels out of his jacket, he like twists around, pulls a gun, but his mistake was he starts shooting when he's like down low. So imagine if he was like this, and it was like pop, 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 pop. He started firing. He was raising up, shoot me like this.
And he was in the passenger seat.
No, we were standing outside.
Oh, gotcha,
we were between two cars.
Okay,
like between. So the first shot like goes to hits the ground. Second shot hits me in the shin. I got a big hole in my shin there, and then the third shot hits in my jacket. I found later because the bullet was still in the jacket, leather jacket.
Wow.
It actually went in here on this side and spun around and landed up on this side.
Wow.
In the pocket.
Wow. You're lucky you didn't get hit in the gut.
Oh my goodness.
Didn't get a gut shot.
And the fourth shot jammed.
Right.
So he had me dead to right, and I'm standing there with a gun in my hand. He got 4 shots off before I even reacted. I'm so, like, I was froze up. I thought it was over.
Yeah.
All I heard was pop, 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 pop. And I'm like, hey, he got me. So then, like, his gun jams, and I'm just like, bah, 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 and I start unloading on him. He turns around and runs, and I freaking keep shooting him. Boom.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, I got it.
What was that? Was that the same story you were telling me where somebody put a gun to your head?
No. That's really insane story. This is a good story. I tell you the story. So I go down the hood. I got 5-6 different black dudes I deal with. You know what I'm saying? You know, because I dealt with a lot of black dudes. That's like I had friends and homeboys I hung out with, and they bought weed from me for years. They loved the good white boy weed, so I buy them weed. But they sold crack and heroin. We all hung out, and we were like a bunch of drug dealers who'd hang out.
Yeah.
So I go down there and I had a couple different buyers, but one guy's I was working with for maybe 6 months, quite a while, 4 or 5 months for sure. And they were always consistent. The dope was good. And you know, I was stupid. I should have been buying like, you know, kilos, but I just buy an ounce or two at a time and then bring it to my cousin, make $400, $500, $600 a day. It was good money, you know, just what I did driving around the city and
just middleman in it.
Yeah, just whatever. No problem. This is just another little side hustle. You know, I got 50 of them going. Yeah. They all add up. So then one day I go down to the house, this guy's house. I'll never forget him. He looked like Grant Hill. Remember Grant Hill?
Of course.
Yeah. So that's what he looked like, the dude. And he gets in the car and he's like, listen, man, I was been paying $700 for ounces, right? He says, it's 800. I'm like, I'm not paying 800 for an ounce of Coke, bro. I said, I go around the corner. There's 5 different people. I can get it. It ain't as good as mine. I'm like, I don't really care how good it is. I'm selling it. So he's like, it's got to be 800. I said, nah, man. Now they know I got a gun. They know I carry a gun. I always wear it out. Like, it's not even like, it's out right here. It's sticking out during these drug deals. I'm not going to let them just get me, you know?
Yeah.
So he said, I said, all right, man, 700, I'm leaving. He's like, all right, fine, 700. He goes in the house. I need to weigh it up. Give me a minute. So they go in the house. They got a dope house across the street. And like, I see a couple of them looking out the window and they're like on the porch and they're in this house looking out the window. And something don't feel right. So I back my car up a little bit. I'm in my girl's car. It was a Probe GT Turbo. So give myself space, leave the car running, put it in neutral. Something didn't feel right. So after a few minutes, finally they get in the car. This dude gets in the car. And he's like, it's got to be 800, man. I started to say like, well then fuck it. I'm not, I'll go over here and get it from her. And all of a sudden I feel this against my head.
Wow.
And I hear, don't move, motherfucker.
Is this broad daylight?
Broad daylight.
Wow.
I hear, don't move, motherfucker. Now my instant reaction was, it was a joke. Yeah. Like they're just messing with me. I've been dealing with these guys for freaking 5 months.
Right.
I see them every day almost. I think it's one of them is playing a game, right?
Yeah.
One of them's like, I got you.
Right.
But then the guy goes, he goes, don't move, motherfucker. And then he goes to rack
one.
Right? Yeah. And it jams. So the next.
Did you hear it jamming?
I looked at it.
Wow.
He goes, don't move, motherfucker. And I looked and the gun's sitting right there. And he goes, and you seen a bullet like sticking out. It jammed. This is God. God is on my side.
Yeah.
Now, in the next like 1 second, a lot happened. It was so fast that, I mean, I knew it was my life or his life. Like, you know what I'm saying? You can't make a mistake at this point. This is your life. It's over. It's over. So in one smooth motion, I grabbed the pistol, you know, like this by the hand and pulled my gun. And I looked at him because I don't know if he's got a gun too, if he's pulling on me. So all this fast, I was like, and I'm pulling the gun. And this dude sees the gun coming up. He dives out. He dives out of the gun. So I reach my gun up, shoot where I think the guy's face is.
Yeah.
I reach up there, pow, and the gun falls in. Like his hand goes limp and it falls down and the gun falls in the back seat. I get an end of the gun and I take off, peel out. Right. And then I get about a couple houses. I hear one shot, pow, like a gunshot. They're shooting at me, but they don't hit me. So now I'm so mad that they tried to rob me. Like I want to get them. So I slam on the brakes and I pull up in the driveway and they're like 4 of them are out there in the street. And I just take an aim going, pow, 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 pow. I'm like they're hiding, ducking. I'm like trying to hit them. I took like 10 seconds to unload that mag, like aiming. I'm aiming. Pow, pow. But anyway,
and then you just took off.
I just took off. Yeah, man.
Wow. And you got to figure that happens every day in Detroit.
Every day. Are you kidding me? Wow. Are you kidding me? That happens every day in Detroit, all the time.
So how long was it until you took a fall? Until you actually caught your bid? You did 13 years in the Michigan state prison system. How long was that before? How long after that incident before you fell?
So about eight years later, I had got busted for bunch of dope. House got raided. And when that happened, the police did it really foul. They basically raided the house, but didn't charge me.
You were selling a lot of heroin, right?
Heroin, weed too. And there was 30 pounds of weed in the house, in the garage. They didn't find it.
And who were your heroin connections?
So at that time, my main heroin plug was a wise guy named, I don't know.
So the wise guys were still bringing in heroin as recently,
he was my cousin,
as recently as like the 2000s.
He's probably still doing it. That's why I'm not
interesting. And it was powder heroin?
No, he was buying it by the key. It was
powder. I mean, like it was China white.
Some, but it's usually brown brick. It was a brick.
Right.
They call it fingers. They'd resell it in fingers. They'd re-rock it in the fingers, 1 ounce fingers.
Right.
But
and what year was this?
2002.
Yeah, I would be very curious to see because the Mexicans have basically subsumed all monopolized all the trade. I wonder if like you could still get like old fashioned East Coast China white heroin that you could sniff.
One of the guys that I used to get it from was from a dude named Bebe, who was a good dude, black dude.
Black dude.
Yeah, and he got China White. And
tell us about the profits real quick. We got to wrap, but I want to hear like a kilo of heroin of China White. It's like $120,000.
$130, yeah.
That's what is that? $130 a gram.
Yeah.
So what do you cut that up into?
I didn't cut it up in the guy. I just sold it in ounces.
Yeah.
So I sold it for like $25,000 no, ounces were quarter. I do sell 4 ounces for like 25,000.
Yeah, that's insane. And would you step on it? Or you just sell it pure?
Just pure, because those guys are going to step on it. They might as well. He was a guy I actually convinced to get out of the freaking heroin game. He's a good dude. And I said, you got the plug on some of the best weed around, this BC Canada blood, right? I said, just do weed, man. You could sell 1,000 pounds, whatever it is, make the same money, but you're not going to risk it. He's like, you're right? So you're right. And then one day after I got busted when I was 29, the guy, Angelo, I was getting my heroin from, I owed him $180,000 for 2 kilos, right?
Yeah.
So I gotta pay him because he's family. I can't just dick him, right? So I go to Bebe and say, listen, I got somebody who's buying 220 pounds of weed, front it to me and I'll get the money and bring it back.
Yeah.
So I took 220 pounds of weed to Angelo and said, will you take this in lieu of the freaking money?
Yeah.
And I gave him 200. I kept 20. And so,
by the way, how did you fuck up the money? How'd you fuck up the original money for 2 keys?
The cops.
Gotcha.
The cops got it.
Gotcha.
And then the cops did the dirty thing of not charging me, but made sure everybody knew I got raided.
Right.
So they tried to.
You look like a rat.
I looked like a rat.
Oh,
so everybody was like, I don't know you, Al. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And you're like, I swear to God, I'm not ratting.
Exactly. I'm telling everybody. I walk in a room, it gets quiet. I'm like, how's that case, Al? Yeah. I didn't get charged with it, mother effers. They never charged me. And then like finally did charge me. And basically at that point, I went on a crime spree. Yeah. Because I couldn't make no money. All the guys I normally make money with, They stopped messing with you. No, nobody wants to mess with me. So now I'm a lone wolf. Yeah. So I grab a gun. You're like a leper at that point. When people in the drug game think you're snitching, it's like you're persona non grata. Exactly. Nobody will buy from you, sell from you, sell to you. Yeah, nobody wanted to be my friend. Trust me. I'm like, you mother effers, man. I'm not ratting. And then they eventually charged me. But in the meantime, I was just doing what gangsters do, not trying to brag or something. I picked up a gun and started robbing banks. Yeah. I started robbing drug dealers. I started robbing pimps. I robbed stores around. I'm just that's a gun. I grabbed a gun and robbed everybody. Yeah. If I knew a guy was moving weight, weed, drugs, whatever, I put a pistol in his head and say, "Open the safe, give me everything," and then I'll worry about you later, man. If you want to come get me later, you better. How did you hit a bank? Tell us about a bank job. I hit a few. The last one was bad. This is actually a good story too. I got to tell it. I was leaving my house in the morning, put a suit on, and I put my pistol in my waist. Looked myself in the mirror and I'm still a pretty handsome guy. I was a good. At this point, I was on drugs. I was using drugs myself. So you were using cocaine? Heroin. Okay. Yeah. I went from pills to heroin. And plus I was gambling. So were you in pain from the assault? I was in pain because I injured myself. Yeah. It started with, I broke my ankle. I broke my ankle and my finger in a fight. So that's how I started the pain pills. Right. And that just escalated. One thing led to another. Okay. Yeah. And I was on, I'd be on for a few months and off for a few months, off for a few months. But anyways, I just bought a nice house in St. Clair Shores. I had a couple toys, a bunch of toys, jet ski, 4-wheeler, motorcycle, dirt bike, beautiful house, couple cars, engaged to get married, beautiful home I just bought. And so my girlfriend at the time says it's bill day, and we always split the bills. I said, well, what's my half of the bills? She's like $2,200. And I'm like, all right. I put it in my pocket. I got $700 in my name and I got no dope. So I said, all right, somebody's about to get robbed. Here's $700. I said, I gave her a kiss. I know she looked at my gun. She looked at my gun and she looked at me like, I give her $700. I said, I'll go to the bank and get the rest. She gave her that. So I walked into the bank, walked in the bank. I had this fake bomb that I made out of like a toolkit, right? And some wire sticking out of it and stuff. And I walked in there and had it in an envelope. And I stuck it on the counter like I was grabbing a withdrawal form or something. Yeah. Stuck it on the counter, walked back out, drove through the drive-through, pushed the button and said, you have a bomb in the counter, right? And if I don't get freaking $75,000 in the next 90 seconds, it's going to go boom with everybody in it. If you run, it's going to go boom. If you call the cops, it's going to go boom. Clock's ticking. Tick, tock. They were like, all right. And they sent out filled a freaking bag full of money. They just handed it through the window to you? No, they went through through the chute. Yeah. know,
dude, that's awesome.
and I freaking ran peeled off.
Oh my God.
But
drive-through service, dude.
yeah, but the problem was, okay, this is where it's stupid. They put a tracking device in the money.
Of course.
Like a dumb
I'm surprised
dummy.
they didn't put an ink
A
pack in
dye
it.
packer in there. No, that's because I got a bomb
didn't
in
have
there.
time, right.
Or the bomb. I could still remote detonate the bomb. So, you know, they didn't
Did you
want-
have a fake
Yeah,
detonator?
I said I had my phone. I said it's detonated by my phone. If I put, you know, they don't know.
Right. They probably have a mandate too that if somebody threatens that, you just give them,
You give them money, right?
Give them the money.
So I go and get on I-94 thinking, okay, I got some money. I don't know if it's 75 grand, but it's probably 20 grand. And I'm like, good, I'm good for a month. I don't got to worry about work. I don't got to do nothing, right? I go pay my bills. I'm all set. You know, I'm going to go get some dope.
Plus you got a dope habit. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go get some dope right now. And I'm going to go freaking get a blunt too. Like, you know, smoke blunt. So I go to get an expressway and I'm driving down the expressway. And I'm in a stolen car, by the way. I'm in a stolen.
Great.
Yeah. So
You're a mess, Al.
I was a mess. Yeah, total mess. A stolen Yukon Denali, which I stole from a car lot. I walked in there and be like, oh, I want to test drive this car. You know what I'm saying? To give him a fake ID. Give me that test drive. I'll be back in a minute. I left. So I've been driving around this stolen car for a week. Just took it from a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm flying down the expressway and all of a sudden I see a black unmarked car on the side of the road. And I knew. I just knew. All of a sudden it got off the expressway and it started getting behind me. So I stomp on the gas and go. And all of a sudden another cop car comes down the thing. And before you know it, there's like four, and I got in this big old high speed chase, bro. Big hell. I had this motherfucker doing about 110 this Denali. And they actually called off the chase. I was going so fast.
Yeah.
It called it back. I got off the exit. There's a police station where I got off. I forgot there's a police station on Allard Drive and Harper Woods. And I'm like, and there was a cop sitting at the light right there. And he's smoking a cigarette in his car. And I'm like, and he's like, what the frick? All these cops come flying. He didn't know about the chase. So I get away. And I end up going to the freaking, my boys, they work in the back of this gas station, just sell bundles, bundles of dope, like 12 packs of dope.
Yeah.
And normally I would have went straight to Kenny and got an ounce or two or whatever. Yeah. My main guy.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I just wanted to get high. So I went back and said, hey, let me get a couple of bundles and a couple of dime bags. They said, yeah. And they're back at the store. I give them $200 for 2 bundles and 2 dime bags. And I buy a freaking strawberry milk and a blunt. And I go in the parking lot and I'm sitting there breaking up this blunt. I didn't even get high, nothing. And all of a sudden I hear, you know the sound of the cop car coming. I don't even look. I know it's coming from me. So I stomp on the gas, go over the parking, over the front lawn, swerve and lose control, smash into a parked car, bounce off, and I'm in another high-speed chase. And I get away, and eventually I get away a couple of times. I don't know how they keep finding me. And it's freaking the money. And so they get me. They end up catching me. I get out and run with a bag of money and a pistol in my hand through the ghetto. White dude running with a bag of money and a pistol in the hood. People are definitely they're like locking their doors. Like, what's going on there? Oh, that's bad. That's really bad. So they end up catching me. It's these 6 cops, and they end up freaking beating my ass really bad.
Right.
They said they were all worked up because one of the cops crashed chasing me or something. The woman. And so they got frenzied and they stomped my ass out. They beat my ass so bad when I went into the jail after they I actually told the guy, I said, I'm going to kill some of you mother effers when I get out.
Wow.
I flat out said it. The one dude, this little Urkel looking mother effer.
Yeah.
I said, bro, I'm killing you and your family. I said this right in front of the sergeant who was fingerprinting me.
Wow.
The guy walks by, says, yeah, mother. He was the main guy.
Yeah.
He runs up and tackles me, bang. He starts pistol whipping me. He's like, what? He's like, why didn't you shoot, white boy? Why don't you shoot? Bang, bang,
Oh,
bang.
these are black cops?
Black cops, all 6 of them. And he's yelling, why didn't you shoot, white boy? Why didn't you shoot? Bang,
Yeah,
bang.
they wanted to kill your
Cracking
ass,
me
man.
with a pistol. And I threw my pistol. I threw it. He was busting me, I had to get stitches. I had to get a full body CAT scan. I was so busted up.
So they beat your ass worse than the time in the ghetto with the bottle and the fucking bat.
I mean, in a way, when they took me to Detroit Receiving, which is insane, it's like Somalia, Detroit Receiving Hospital. It's just all chaos. It's chaos in there. And there was a white nurse comes in. He looks at me. I'm all covered in bruises. Yeah, bleeding from multiple gashes on my head from when they pistol whipped me. So he goes, I don't even know where to start with you, bro. Wow. He's like, I got to give you a whole body CAT scan. I don't even know how bad. He's the one who told me about the lump in my chest. Mm-hmm. At that point, he says, you're not broken. You just got superficial wounds and bruises, so you're going to be sore for a while. But you got some weird like tumor under your chest.
Did you consider suing the city? Try to get some money out of them?
I did. They all lied and said that I fell off a fence and all this crap. I was
Detroit, man.
Yeah, and I was going to jail. How am I going to sue from prison? You know what I mean?
So what were the charges and what did you cop out to?
So extortion, bank robbery, armed robbery, like 4 armed robberies.
How did you not catch a Fed case if it was bank robbery?
Because it wasn't a federally insured bank. Yeah.
Oh, it was like a little credit union or something?
Yeah, it was a Comerica. It was Comerica Bank is what it was.
Oh, interesting.
So if they're not federally insured, then it's not federal.
Right.
So
I'm sure the feds could pick the case up if they wanted to,
Yeah,
but it didn't
they
sound
could.
like they gave a shit.
No, they didn't.
Because they stacked on, running from the cops.
Oh God, they had everything. I got me on a kidnapping charge.
How? How'd you kidnap?
I took somebody's car at gunpoint and I walked them
During the chase?
and after in the chase,
Right.
I grabbed somebody said, "Give me your car," and I walked.
Because you were trying to dump the stolen you had.
Yeah,
to
well,
get
no,
to a
I
different
crashed
car.
the stolen.
Oh,
I crashed
okay.
it into a house
Right.
and left it, and then kicked in their door and freaking. They had a dog that almost bit me. I fired a warning shot at it. And then I told the lady, "Come here, I'm not going to hurt you. Just give me your car. Where's your car keys?" She's like, "They're in the." I said, "Come here." I grabbed her by the arm. Just walk me to your car keys.
Right.
You walk, but if you walk somebody more than 15 feet, that's kidnapping. So I freaking they dropped it. But I
So
did
what'd you cop to?
extortion, bank robbery, and like 2 armed robberies and the pistols.
Yeah.
I got
Well, what do they want to give you?
They wanted to give me 30 years.
Yeah.
Originally.
Yeah.
They wanted to give me 30 freaking years, but
But you did you have a sheet as an adult at this point? Had you caught in a case?
oh yeah.
Did they charge you as an adult from the steroid beef?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
So you had a sheet.
and I got busted for some pounds of weed.
Did you you had a good lawyer though, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Must have,
I got
right?
caught with 18 pounds of weed, and God, I wish we had more time. That's an amazing story too. But anyways, I got possession with intent to deliver.
Yeah.
For that.
Well, what'd you cop to? How'd you go to prison? What was the full
Extortion, bank robbery, armed robbery.
what was the amount of time?
13 to 50. Yeah.
And you did so you did 13.
I did 13.3.
Yeah.
So they said they wanted to give me 30, and I couldn't believe it when I went to go to sentencing. They're like 30. I'm like, what the frick happened to this? They screwed me on a plea agreement. By the way, I was supposed to only get 9.5 years. Macomb County was giving me 9.5 years. Oakland County for the extortion was supposed to run it concurrent. So Oakland County said, here, sign this plea agreement, and we'll run it concurrent with whatever Macomb County gives you, as long as it's on the bottom half of the guidelines. So I go over to Macomb County and plead guilty to all this bank robbery, armed robbery, gun violation, or whatever. So then Oakland County takes those convictions and reconfigures my guidelines using these brand new convictions from yesterday and says, oh, sorry, we're still going to give you the bottom half of the guidelines, but it's now 156 to 320 months instead of 74 to 114 months. So they just they stole 3.5 years away.
Yeah.
And I told my lawyer, I'm like, what the frick? And I didn't have a good lawyer for that. That little extortion case, I wasn't even worried about it. My bond was only $20,000. I had $5 million in bonds from Macomb County and only $20,000 million for the extortion. And I said, I used a court-appointed lawyer. I'm like, what do I care about? They'll just run this concurrent. Let's run it concurrent. And that's what happened because I didn't use a good lawyer on this this case over here. They fried me.
Look at that. Look at that. Just choosing to cheap out on a lawyer.
Exactly.
Like that's
cost me 3 years.
That's how much difference a paid good lawyer versus a hack.
Exactly. Cost me 3 years. 3 years of my life gone. I tried to appeal it. No, they don't even look at cases like that. You know what I'm saying? So
the moral of the story is Al Gunner, Lindbloom, you're a good guy. You'd be tough to tell from the stories you just relayed for the last couple hours. You went to prison. You started writing in prison. You became an author. He's written how many books now?
10. I've written 10 novels.
10 novels. He's currently under contract with what streamer to make a television series out of you?
Well, a production company called Burnt Enterprise is making a TV series.
Yeah.
That I can't talk about exactly what the series is about.
Right.
But I will say this: I'm the lead writer, and also it's a really amazing, incredible story. And there's some big names attached to it. Big actors attached to it.
Yeah. And then of course your clothing line.
Yep. Art Thing Apparel.
Yep. Which we're gonna give a plug to. Yeah, man. So you really you turned yourself around.
Yeah.
Prison was probably the best thing that's ever happened to you because now you've got this amazing wife. You've got, you live upstate. You got out of Detroit, and you're doing what you love to do. I think you're doing your purpose now as a writer.
Yeah, I think probably the most remarkable thing about my story, and I think everybody should hear it, is the fact that when I went to prison, I decided I didn't want to go back to that life anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, and just like you, I decided I'm going to change. how do I change? I just, you have just your whole mindset. You start over. But I was in the hole for 17 months. In fact, I got beat by the cops when I was in the hole. I ever tell you that story?
No.
Like,
we're going to save that for the Patreon, you guys, because we got to wrap. We've been going so long.
Well, the moral is my wife found me when I was in prison, and that's a really interesting story. So stay tuned to that.
Yeah.
Look me up. Go to my YouTube or look me up. How my wife discovered me was a fluke. Found me on Facebook. She worked for a publisher in New York. Saw that I was a writer. Decided to write me. We started writing as pen pals. She fell in love with me.
Yeah.
Ended up waiting 7 years, and then here I am today. So
we call that a ride or die.
Ride or die.
Yeah.
She was totally ride or die, bro.
That's awesome, man.
All the way.
That's awesome. Well, I'm thrilled you came out to see us, man. That's an incredible story. Well, let's tell some prison stories on the Patreon.
Okay.
You'll go check his website out. Plug the website.
Gunner Detroit.
Yeah.
GunnerDetroit.com.
GunnerDetroit.com. I mean, his stories about the mob and about, he just basically scratched the surface of, his own personal tale.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. So, and we are going to come out to Detroit and see you soon.
Do something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Check him out. Thank you so much, Al. We'll talk to you guys.
My YouTube channel, I want to plug that.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is Gunner Detroit or just Gunner Lindbloom. I have a gun. So if you want a little more in-depth look at me, I tell a lot of these stories there. There's like a couple hundred of them, and I've interviewed a bunch of people, and it's interesting. So if you want to check that out too. And ouratthingapparel.com, custom make it to your city. I'm just saying.
That's it, man. Go get yourself a tracksuit. We got some, definitely some Gindaloons out there that would look good in a tracksuit. There we go.
But it'd be your city.
He can custom make it. So if you live in,
whatever your city is,
Indianapolis, he'll make one for you.
Yep.
Okay, guys, take care. We'll talk to you next week.
We're out.
Yeah.